he is underwater with independent voters by 22 percentage points. That is just historically extraordinary, particularly at this stage of a presidency. Moreover, the majority of Americans are very unhappy with how Trump's tariff uncertainty, his seeming arbitrary imposition of tariffs, and his justifications were totally fabricated. Those numbers were not tariffs at all. They were simply dividing the trade deficit by the total amount of trade, which is influenced by all kinds of things. But he's getting terrible marks from the American people on the economy. And of course, as always, that is the first priority of the American public.
Hi, I'm Jo Crawford and welcome to Times Radio's Trump Report. Today I'm joined by Allan Lichtman, election forecaster and distinguished professor of history at the American University and author of the forthcoming book, Conservative at the Core. Thank you for joining me on the Trump Report today.
My great pleasure.
So we heard from the press secretary today that she said that the White House is looking at trade deals drafted by more than 15 countries and is expected that some of these deals will be announced very soon. We heard from Vance yesterday. He said that he believed that America and the UK will reach some sort of great agreement, in his words. But what else do you think we can expect?
Well, with Trump, you never know what to expect. The tariffs are on. The tariffs are off. Certain elements of the tariffs are on or off. But let's not underestimate the tremendous power an American president has to wield. We are the world's richest nation, the strongest economy. Nations depend on us. The president of the United States is the most powerful leader in the world. So it would not be a huge surprise to see some kind of deals or arrangements reached. But when it comes to Donald Trump, anything can happen.
We also heard Vance suggesting that there might be a few more deals agreed with some other European states. I asked this yesterday, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how you think Vance feels about America making trade deals with European countries. I mean, the vice president has been very critical, both openly and privately, about the continent.
What Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have done is subvert, undermine, not entirely destroy, though, the collective security arrangements between the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, Japan, that have really kept democracies safe since the end of World War II. And in my mind, this is an incredibly dangerous development. And I'm not saying we've gone past the point of no return, but a lot of repair work is going to needs to be done between the United States and its European allies.
And it's an interesting point you make there, because Vance yesterday, he criticised Europe for having a lot of their security infrastructure depend on the US. I mean, as you just said there, you feel that America's sort of broken ties there from a security perspective with Europe. But where would you say we stand now if some trade agreements can be formed with other European countries?
Well, if trade agreements can be reached that are mutually beneficial to both countries, that'll go a long way to repairing relations. Words are one thing, but it's deeds that really count. And we're looking to the deeds now. But remember, all of this is still uncertain and unfinished. If we look at the past history of trade deals, you don't complete them in days, weeks, or months. They take a year or even more and don't always achieve a positive result.
Allan, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about how you think what Trump is doing with tariffs at the moment is being absorbed by the American public. How do you think they're taking this?
Trump's approval ratings are plummeting. They were reasonably high compared to his first term early on, but now they are falling apart. And The only reason they're even in the low 40 to mid 40% range is because he's held on for the most part to his Republican base. But what should be very sobering to Donald Trump and his allies is the collapse of his support among the critical group of independent voters. You can't win just with Republican support. And in the latest poll, get this, he is underwater with independent voters by 22 percentage points. That is just historically extraordinary, particularly at this stage of a presidency. Moreover, the majority of Americans are very unhappy with how Trump's tariff uncertainty, his seeming arbitrary imposition of tariffs, and his justifications were totally fabricated. Those numbers were not tariffs at all. They were simply dividing the trade deficit by the total amount of trade, which is influenced by all kinds of things. But he's getting terrible marks from the American people on the economy. And of course, as always, that is the first priority of the American public. We've also seen warning signs for what Trump is doing in special elections. We had a critical election to decide the future of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Would it go liberal? Would it go conservative? This was the critical fourth seat out of 7. Wisconsin is the consummate swing state. You know, it's typically won by one side or another at 1 percentage point or less. Elon Musk spent, I don't know, maybe $20 million trying to influence that election. Overall, it smashed all records for spending for a judicial election, a state judicial election, and the Democrat won by 10 points, a near landslide, in 2 ruby red Florida districts, including one held by Matt Gaetz, where Republicans had won by 30 points or more. The Republicans still won the special election, but with 50% less than they had previously achieved.
How would you say that it's going down with Trump's core base of MAGA supporters, though? When we look at Trump's campaign messaging, this was all a big part of it as well, wasn't it?
Well, so far the MAGA base has pretty well held, but not entirely. Look at what's going on with town halls held by Republican members of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. We're not talking about necessarily swing districts, certainly not Democratic districts. We're talking about pretty solidly Republican districts. We're talking about states like Iowa that Trump won overwhelmingly. And this Republican base has been expressing its outrage almost entirely. The commentary and the questions have been critical of Trump, in many cases severely critical, really putting Republican senators and U.S. House members on edge. In other words, Trump supporters, in essence, are voting with their feet to question exactly what Trump is doing.
I want to turn to Joe Biden because we heard from him. He used his first speech since leaving office to criticize Trump's welfare policies, saying that the president had taken a hatchet to Social Security, which is an area which Trump and Musk have both claimed that it's full of fraud. That's what they're claiming there. I mean, what did you make of that speech from him?
I think Joe Biden felt he had to speak out. Social Security is the signature liberal democratic program, first instituted, of course, by the great liberal icon president Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 1930s. And even Republicans, even conservative Republicans to this point, have not dared to touch Social Security. It's been considered the third rail, the electrified third rail of American politics. But now Musk and Trump seem to have set their sights on Social Security. 70 million Americans depend on Social Security. Musk called it a Ponzi scheme. They're talking about cuts to Social Security personnel, making it more difficult to sign on to Social Security, making it more difficult to sustain your Social Security benefits, and perhaps even envisioning, although this isn't certain at all, some kind of benefit cuts to Social Security. This is the singular, most critical liberal democratic program, and Joe Biden felt he absolutely had to come out in defense of it.
We hear reporting at the moment from individuals who are already facing the impacts of cuts to services from agencies that have been impacted by Musk's Doge, making cuts there. How do you think that's going down in terms of polling?
Well, it's not going down well at all, as most people. Elon Musk's approval rating is down in the gutter. And remember, this is a guy laden with conflicts of interest. He is a private citizen. He has not been appointed by the president to any position. He has not been vetted. He has not been approved by the Senate as a federal officer. He's still just a private citizen, yet he's running amok through our entire government. Taking a chainsaw to cut jobs, dismantle agencies and departments established by the Congress of the United States, which seems to have totally relinquished its responsibility as the first branch of government. Article 1 is the Congress, not the president under the Constitution. And Elon Musk's approval rating, as I said, is down in the gutter, and it's bringing down Trump's approval rating overall. Nor is there any evidence that all of this cruelty, it's cruel, it's not just unwise and misguided. People depend on these jobs. There are single moms with disabled kids who are wondering how they're going to pay their bills. And it's not clear that they've uncovered any real waste and fraud. They just say waste and fraud as if that's the magic words that justify all these cuts. And just recently said, oh, we finally made a big discovery, hundreds of millions of dollars in labor fraud. It was discovered years ago by the government, and they were taking action to deal with this fraud on unemployment compensation. I believe that's what it was. Musk discovered nothing. You can't just say waste and fraud and then, engage in this wholesale attack on the government, and it's not clear they've saved any money. You fire someone, what happens? They're not going to be able to pay their taxes. They're not going to spend. They're going to collect unemployment compensation, which drains the Treasury. The operations of their organizations are going to be less efficient. And when you're talking about cutting IRS personnel, you are going to diminish the ability of the government to collect taxes, which in turn will balloon the deficit. So it's not clear that all of this depredations have saved anything at all.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, cases of fraud have already been found prior to the Trump administration. This isn't the first time that this is being uncovered. And also, as you mentioned, it's that interchangeability of those words there of waste and then fraud.
We've seen the same thing with voting. They wave the banner of voter fraud. So therefore, we have to adopt these stringent measures that make it far more difficult for people to register and vote. Do they actually demonstrate voter fraud? Of course not. There have been numerous cases. I've been involved in a number of them. I've been an expert witness in 110 civil rights and voting rights cases. And in the court, we actually have to present proof in places all across the country: Texas, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, when actually asked to present evidence of any consequential voter fraud at all, every time they've come up empty. And yet they want to threaten the ability to register of married women who change their names, of people who don't, and there are tens of millions of them, maybe as many as 20 million people who don't have the requisite show your papers documentation to prove citizenship.
Well, it's always great to speak to you, Allan. Thank you so much for joining me on the Trump Report today.
My great pleasure. Thanks for the terrific questions.